The grand oak doors of the Eldridge Library creaked like an old man's sigh, admitting a sliver of autumn sunlight into the vaulted halls. Built in 1892 in the heart of Boston's Beacon Hill, the library was a relic of gilded excess, marble floors etched with constellations, towering shelves groaning under leather-bound tomes, and alcoves where whispers echoed like ghosts. It was a place for scholars and solitaries, where time folded in on itself, page by yellowed page. Leora Hale, 32, was one such solitary. As the head archivist, she tended the rare books collection like a gardener with fragile orchids. Her days blurred in a rhythm of gloved hands and magnifying glasses, cataloging manuscripts that had outlived their authors. Tall and willowy, with raven hair pinned in a practical chignon and wire-rimmed glasses perched on her freckled nose, Leora preferred the company of Austen heroines to living suitors. A decade ago, a betrayal by her fiancé, exposed in a tabloid scandal, had sealed her heart like a vacuum-sealed folio. "Books don't leave," she'd murmur to the empty restoration room, her voice swallowed by stacks of vellum. Into this sanctuary wandered Theo Langford on a blustery October afternoon. At 34, he was a travel writer chasing deadlines for Wanderlust Quarterly, his latest assignment a feature on America's hidden literary gems. Disheveled from a red-eye from Dublin, with tousled chestnut hair, a wool scarf knotted haphazardly, and eyes the color of aged ink, Theo clutched a battered notebook. He'd heard whispers of Eldridge's whispering gallery, a spiral staircase where acoustics carried secrets from floor to floor. Perfect for a story, he thought, shaking rain from his coat. Their collision was literal. Leora, arms laden with a crate of incunabula, rounded a corner too sharply. Books tumbled like dominoes, and Theo lunged to catch them, succeeding with all but one, which skidded under a reading table. "Bloody hell, sorry," he exclaimed, dropping to his knees in pursuit. She knelt too, their heads nearly bumping. "These are 15th century prints. Irreplaceable," she hissed, though her tone softened at his sheepish grin. "Guilty as charged. Traveler's curse, always stumbling into treasures." He retrieved the volume, handing it over with exaggerated reverence. Their fingers brushed, and Leora felt a spark, like static from wool on silk. Unnerved, she stood abruptly. "Access to rares requires an application. Standard protocol." Theo's smile widened, undeterred. "Theo Langford, at your service. And you are the guardian of these gates." Leora Hale, archivist. She adjusted her glasses, hiding a flicker of amusement. "Protocol stands. But fate, that capricious editor, had other revisions." The next morning, Theo returned with a forged application, a charming essay on why Eldridge deserved its own chapter in literary lore. Leora, against her better judgment, approved it. 1 hour. Supervised. He arrived with coffee, black, no sugar, just how she'd mentioned in passing the day before. "Research fuel," he said, settling into the alcove beside her desk. As she uncrated a first edition Bronte, he peppered her with questions. "What's the most heart-wrenching inscription you've found?" She hesitated, then opened a slim volume of Byron. "This one, to E, who fled with my soul but not my shadow. A jilted lover, 1812. Her voice dipped, laced with unintended vulnerability. Theo leaned in, notebook forgotten. "Sounds like a story worth chasing across oceans." His gaze held hers, steady and searching, until the library clock chimed, shattering the moment. Over weeks, Theo became a fixture. He'd arrive at opening, armed with pastries from the corner boulangerie, and they'd pore over artifacts, illuminated medieval prayer books. Letters from Hemingway's lost loves. Leora taught him to decipher faded script. He regaled her with tales from Marrakesh souks and Scottish highlands. "Travel's not about miles," he'd say, sketching maps on scrap vellum. "It's about the stories that stick to your souls." One evening, as gas lamps flickered to life, Theo discovered the Whispering Gallery. He coaxed Leora up the spiral stairs, the air thick with dust motes dancing like fireflies. "Lean in," he instructed, cupping his mouth to the wall. "The library's secrets travel here." She pressed her ear to the stone, hearing his voice curl around her. "Leora Hale, you've archived my heart without even trying." Her breath caught. Was it a trick of acoustics, or something more? Turning, she found him inches away, the staircase's curve framing them in shadow. "Theo." Before doubt could bind her tongue, he kissed her, soft at first, like turning a fragile page, then deeper, a rush of ink and adventure. She melted into it, hands tangling in his scarf, the world narrowing to the taste of coffee and courage. Their romance unfolded like a well-plotted novel. Stolen lunches in the rooftop garden, where they'd debate plot twists over turkey sandwiches, midnight cataloging sessions that dissolved into laughter and lingering touches. Theo showed her the city beyond the stacks, ferry rides to Charlestown, where they'd watch fireworks bloom over the harbor, his arm a warm anchor against the chill. Leora, in turn, lent him her grandmother's antique fountain pen, its nib tracing words that made her cheeks burn. "You're the plot twist I never saw coming." Yet, as with any tale, conflict loomed in the margins. Theo's editor wired an urgent dispatch, a month-long assignment in Tuscany, profiling Renaissance artists. "It's the break I've waited for," he confessed one rainy night, as they huddled in her cluttered apartment above a rare bookshop. Volumes teetered on every surface, a cozy chaos lit by a single desk lamp. Leora's heart clenched like a misbound spine. "And us? I'm not built for postcards and promises." Memories of her ex's vanishing act flooded back, the empty side of the bed, the unanswered calls. He took her hands, calloused from miles walked. "This isn't that. You're not a chapter I close, you're the whole damn book." But doubt lingered, a footnote she couldn't erase. The departure was a quiet unraveling. At South Station, amid the clamor of travelers, Theo pulled her into an alcove. "Write to me. Every day. Let the words be our bridge." He pressed a leather journal into her palm, its pages blank and begging. She nodded, throat tight, and watched his train vanish into the fog. Tuscany's olive groves and cypress spires should have enchanted Theo, but separation sharpened every sense. His dispatches arrived in elegant script, sketches of sun-dappled villas, confessions of counting cobblestones to tally the days. Leora filled the journal with replies, not just letters, but fragments of her soul, recipes for her mother's apple strudel, annotations on sonnets that echoed his absence. "The stacks feel emptier without your questions," she wrote. "Hurry back, some stories demand a sequel." Back in Boston, the library's holiday gala approached, a black tie affair in the grand reading room, transformed with twinkling lights and evergreen boughs. Leora dreaded it, a swirl of silk gowns and small talk that chafed like ill-fitted gloves. But Theo's latest letter, tucked into a pressed wildflower, urged, "Dance for me. Wear the blue dress, the one that makes you look like a Bronte heroine come to life." She went, sapphire silk whispering against her legs, hair loose in waves for the first time in years. As the quartet struck up a waltz, she wandered the fringes, nursing mulled wine. Then, a hand on her elbow. "May I?" Theo, windswept from a red-eye, in a borrowed tux that hung charmingly loose. "You came," she gasped, the words a prayer. Couldn't miss the plot's climax. He swept her onto the floor, their steps tentative then fluid, bodies remembering what minds had feared to forget. Under the chandelier's glow, amid rustling taffeta and laughter, he spun her out, then pulled her close. I turned down the extension. Tuscany was beautiful, but it wasn't home. You are. Tears pricked her eyes. I archived my hurts too tightly. But with you, I want to dog-ear the pages, spill coffee on the margins. Live it messily. He kissed her forehead, then her lips, to scattered applause from bemused patrons. Messy it is. Starting now. In the years that followed, their lives interleaved like endpapers in a binding. Theo's columns wove in Eldridge lore, crediting, "My muse in the stacks." Leora, emboldened, co-authored a book on hidden library histories, illustrated with his wanderer's sketches. They married in the Whispering Gallery, vows carried on stone echoes to every corner. No grand cathedral, just them, a handful of friends, and the ghosts of lovers past bearing witness. Challenges came, as they do in every volume, Theo's wanderlust clashing with her rooted routines, a miscarriage that left them hollowed like gutted pages. But they mended, line by line, therapy sessions over tea, weekend escapes to quiet inns where they'd read aloud until dawn. On their 5th anniversary, Theo surprised her with a custom shelf in their brownstone, a miniature Eldridge, stocked with their joint writings. "Our story," he said, etching the final inscription, "to L, who found me between the lines." Leora traced the words, heart full. Love, she'd learned, wasn't preserved in perfect condition. It was the creases from rereading, the notes in the margins, the courage to turn the page. And in the hush of their home, surrounded by stories they'd built, they whispered on, eternal as ink on vellum.